All right, so in those first two videos, we took kind of a higher level look at functional programming and declarative programming, and in this video, we're gonna get a little more into the nuts and bolts as we talk about one of my favorite innovations of ES6, which is the arrow function. Um, and so, the arrow function takes your standard arrow or standard function declaration and just shortens it a bit, adding this great symbol. I think great symbol, this arrow, which to me connotes all of the transformative potential of a function. And you can see you can declare a function just by replacing that function keyword essentially with the arrow. Um, those can get really short if they're not named functions, right? If we've just got, say, an immediately invoked function declaration like this, where it's going to take in A and B and implicitly return the sum of A and B. So we can lose the curly braces and the return keyword and get a really short function declaration, which is great in callbacks, which we'll see in a second. And we can also name our functions. We can name our arrow functions, storing them in variables. And we can also have multi-line or many-line arrow functions, where we bring back those curly braces, and then put the body of our function in there. It's the same as every other function body, and we'll just return the value we want to return from the function at the end. And so the advantages of arrow functions is they're short. We can use that implicit return to make them even shorter, and they look nifty. But perhaps more importantly is this question of scope, which we're going to look at now, and that's a big deal. For instance, in React, when working with classes. So this question of scope, right? Scope, remember, is how we determine the value of a variable within our code. It's determined by the current scope. And functions, the curly braces of a function define a scope, but they also exist within a scope. Functions are declared within a certain scope. And so here we've got a globally scoped variable named myName, and we've got a globally scoped function called sayMyName. And inside of that function, I'm logging that global variable, and I'm also logging this, which is the keyword that returns the current context, right? So if I run this function, sayMyName, I should get the current scope logged to the console. And I'm just going to do that. We're going to take a look at this now. And I've got that code here. I'm going to take this code and I'm going to paste it into the browser console so we can evaluate it. And so if I declare my name and sayMyName, I can run this function, sayMyName. And sayMyName is, that's a different one. Yeah, actually, you know what? Let's run sayMyName. And in the slides, I did this a little bit differently to start with, but I'm gonna run sayMyName. I'm gonna pass in my name, and now I get Sammy. So you can see I sort of rewrote this function a little bit, and you'll see why in a second. So that it now takes an input and logs the input. Now, if I I'm going to actually, I don't want to redo this video, so I'm going to say original say my name. And I'm going to make that be this function that doesn't take anything in, but logs out my name, and it logs out this. And you'll see why in a second, because what I want to do is create a, what I want to do is, actually let's make sure that works. Original say my name, and that should just work just like this. No input parameters, right? It's just going to log out that globally scoped variable my name, and also this. And that way we can see what this is, right? Again, it's still the window. It's still the global scope. And in that scope, we have access to a bunch of methods. The window object has a bunch of methods, including one called setInterval that maybe you're familiar with. And what setInterval is going to do is repetitively call this function at some interval that I define. And so what I can do is say const repeat name equals set interval, which is a function. And this function wants two things. It wants a function. Okay, so now we're actually using functional programming, and we're maybe learning that we've been using functional program all along if we've been writing JavaScript, because when we call set interval, set timeout, on click, all of these methods of the browser are higher order functions. They're functions which take in a function and do something with it. And we'll get deeper into higher order functions in the next video. But for now, what I'm going to do is just say original say my name, and I'm going to have that run every second. And you can see it's doing exactly what I hoped it would do, but it's filling up my browser window. So what I can do is say clear interval, and I'm going to clear that interval that I specified, which was repeat name. And so now that stops. Now what if I call set interval and I want to pass in say my name? Remember that function that takes an input, and so it's going to take in this input my name, and I'm gonna do that same thing. And are we, the question is this going to work? And I want you to think about it before I do it. Focusing on what's the value of say my name with that input parameter. And we'll see when I run this, no. That is not working. And before I say why, I want you to think about why. I'll just give you like 3 seconds. Hopefully you got the answer on your own, but the answer, the reason this isn't working is that set interval wants a function, and I'm not giving it a function, I'm giving it a value. I'm giving it the evaluation value of say my name passed in with my name, which is not a function. That is actually nothing, because it doesn't return anything. So in order to make this work like this, what I need is an arrow function. I need to be able to declare a function and put this function inside of that function. So something like this, I can say set interval, and then return say my name with my name, and I'm going to call that every second. So you see the difference now is I'm passing in a function. And that's, just your standard function declaration, but it's very concise. And so in situations like this where we want to pass in a function, perhaps maybe as a callback, um, or an onClick method, this immediately invoked function style is really great and concise. And I forgot to name this interval, so I'm going to have to close this browser window and make a new one. And so we can see, right, in this situation like this is a tremendously useful thing to have this arrow syntax. Much more concise than needing to write that as a multi-line function declaration inside of those parentheses. And now the next place where arrow functions are just absolutely lifesavers is in the class syntax, which, unlike most languages, in JavaScript, classes are functions, right? And that's an important thing to remember as especially working with React, which uses that class syntax a lot. I think a lot of people get confused and they think it's object-oriented programming that's happening in React, but it's not, because classes are functions. Classes are a special type of function, but they're still functions. And so what I'm going to do is go back to this code, and we'll look at this this Sammy class. So what I've done is just taken that code and wrap it in a class named Sammy. And so now Sammy's got a property called this.name, which is equal to Sammy. And I'm not gonna explain this class syntax too much. My hope is that you already understand this class syntax a little bit. And if not, I recommend Eloquent JavaScript to learn all about it. And the link to that is in the description for these videos. And so Sammy's got a method also, speak, and it's going to do the same thing say my name did. So let's bring this into the browser window, and we'll just test it out. So we'll declare this class Sammy, and I'm going to make a new variable named me, and I'm going to set me equal to a new Sammy. Right? And so now I can say me.speak. And you can see I get back the this.name, and I also get back the current context, which is now no longer the window, it's now Sammy. Right? And so this is a key aspect of working with classes, of course, is they create a new this, which is tremendously useful. Now, what if I want to add in this set interval to this class? So when I call this class, and I'm actually gonna put it in the constructor here. I'm just gonna say this dot repeat name. I'm gonna set that equal to set interval. And it's going to call this dot speak. And I'm going to call it again every second. And so let's just bring this code in, and I'm going to make a new browser context, because Sammy's already declared in that other one. So here, if I say again, right? Now when I instantiate a new Sammy, we get a problem. right? Name no longer has a value because I'm in the window. Why is that? Because set interval exists, not on Sammy, but on the window. And this is the source of much confusion and sadness when programming with React and in JavaScript in general. But there doesn't need to be so much sadness because we have the arrow function. So let's just get rid of both of these windows and make a new one. And this time what I'm going to do is fix this. So there's one way to fix this, which is the old-fashioned way to fix this. And I'm just going to show you this. So we can say this.speak equals this.speak.bind this. And this has been around, you know, for a long time, this method of binding a method to its class. But it seems wholly unnecessary to me, and I've always found it kind of awkward and ugly. I should mention this is an example of something important in functional programming, which is called partial application, which we'll get to in the next video. But if we run this now, we'll see a very different result, right? This.speak, which is being invoked here in set interval, is now bound to this current scope, to Sammy. And so it won't adopt the scope of set interval, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, just give this a second, come back, watch it again, and just keep watching it until it makes sense. But if I run this in the browser window, bring a new browser over here, and here's my new Sammy. And I'll do me equals new Sammy. And we'll get the correct scope, right? And it's got access to the name, and it knows where it should be. So I've bound it. But we can do that using arrow functions, which is awesome. So here we go. What I'm going to do is get rid of this bind. And all I have to do is declare this as an arrow function. And we'll try this again. And new browser window. And I'm going to set me equal to a new Sammy. And we see again, we get that. We get the correct scope without binding it to anything. Because arrow functions are dope. That's why. Okay, so arrow functions are great for this reason. If no other reason, right? This is enough, right? Again, just, you know, to review, right? If we use this method set interval that's not scoped within Sammy, that's a method of the browser. Then this.speak, written with no arrow, right, will get its scope from set interval. And it's going to lose track of all of the properties that are declared on Sammy, which is a big problem. If, on the other hand, we declare this with an arrow function, we're good. And so that's enough reason, you know, in my book, to, when in doubt, use arrow functions, honestly. Yeah. So I hope that helped a little bit. I hope that was interesting. I hope it wasn't overwhelming. If it was, maybe go back and watch it again. And in the next video, I'm going to talk about something that's a little more complex, which is the notion of a higher order function, and we'll talk about currying, partial application, and this is really the hard stuff of functional JavaScript, but also the really useful and interesting side of functional JavaScript. So I'll see you in that one.